first interactive session. May I firstly please invite Dr. Halla Diab from the Organization for Democracy and Freedom in Syria. Also Mr. Anwar Yusuf from the Kurdish Democratic Party. Mr. Farouk Masara from the National Democratic Council. And Mr. Ribal Al-Assad from the Organization for Democracy and Freedom in Syria.
Constructing the format of the dialogue that we're going to have today, I intentionally stayed away from having very specific closed questions. I thought I would start the debate off simply by saying, what do you see as the current and future challenges for Syria? In order to allow all of you as open a remit as possible to make your contributions. I am going to try and be as strict as I possibly can with time, allowing each of you 5 minutes to make an initial contribution. I will then at that stage open for questions from the audience. Please, if you wish to place a question, raise your hand and then I will call you all in turn. Would you kindly interpret that for me?
ولكن الجواب مطروح بحاجة أن يكون السؤال الأساسي المطروح أمامنا اليوم في هذه الندوة: ما هي التحديات المستقبلية لسوريا؟ وهذا ما نطلبه من الجميع الذين طلبناهم في إبداء مداخلاتهم. بالنسبة للأسئلة يرجى فيما بعد أن من يريد أن يطرح سؤال أن يرفع يده ثم يطرح سؤاله فيما بعد.
So with that, if I could go straight to you, Mr. Anwar Yusuf, to make your opening remarks of 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you, as I know you have made huge effort to have us here today, and I would like to thank Mr. William Morris as well, and everyone who has been part of this conference. And I would like to thank EU Parliament as well, not for having only this event, for having all events yesterday and today and so on, so you can have a clear view about Syria and you can have a make your judgment exactly the way you think. First of all, I will be very quick. I think from beginning, the regime is responsible for what is going on today, for this bloodshed. This regime is not willing to stop this bloodshed, so we have to do something to stop this regime for doing so. So the other things, not only the regime is responsible, we are responsible as well as the opposition. So our part of responsibility is because we are not unified, we are not united, we are not recognizing each other. That is the big point. We have to work together and we have to be exchanging our view, because Syria is not only for Syrian National Council. Today I am a member of the executive committee of the Syrian Democratic National Council. We are working very hard with all other opposition in order to unite and to stop regime from this brutal killing on the street. That is our aim. To be honest, from beginning, Syrian National Council has hijacked the opposition entirely and is not doing things in the right way at all. Their only aim is to get recognition, and that is all. So that is what we are trying to work and to have to be partnered with the all other opposition within Syria as well, like coordination committee, and we have a Syrian Kurdish council as well on the ground. Unfortunately, Syrian Kurdish council has not been even recognized by the Syrian National Council. Even they do not recognize them as their right of self-determination. But we are in this democratic national council, we have recognized that, and we wish so every opposition group, they can understand this point. And I won't be long, just few minutes if you let me please. I want to talk about yesterday's conference as well. I was here yesterday and I was listening to Ms. Katmani, I think, and her colleague. They were here. Unfortunately, I was really very disappointed, and that is a fact, you can know that. She was saying that 90% of Syrian people are within the Syrian National Council, which is not true. That is number one. And number two, she was saying, when we raised the question of self-determination for Kurd, she was saying that is right, we are not against, but we have a point that Syrian people, they are very threatened from this self-determination. So in fact, if we have something right, we have to go forward, and we don't have to say they are threatening or they are not threatening. The other thing she mentioned when she started, rather than saying we thank EU Parliament to give us a chance to sit here, she started with saying, I am really sorry and I do apologize, and I am really concerned about the EU Parliament letting the other group, which we, all of us today, so she is against this point we are hearing today, because we are voice of freedom, we are telling true and right messages, and we are not afraid of anybody because we are doing in the right things and in the right direction. But they are very afraid of all these things. And regarding to the 90% they are within the Syrian National Council, she was saying that Damascus Declaration is a part of it and Brotherhood is a part of it. And as we know, Damascus Declaration today does not exist at all. Kurds have withdrawn and it's only few members that are part of it. I think my time is over. So thank you very much for your attention, and I wish best future for Syria. We will all work together for the sake of Syria and for unite this opposition, hopefully. Thank you very much.
Mr. Yusuf, thank you for that. I'll go straight to the interpretation, if you would kindly. Thank you. No sooner have I put in place time restrictions of 5 minutes, but I received representations that some of the speakers may be slightly longer than that. I will be as flexible as I can be, but please do bear in mind that with the interpretation as well, it is creating time pressures, and I want to be sure that we get as much interaction as we can from the floor. Can I move on swiftly at this point, please, to call on Dr. Halla Diab to kindly make her intervention today.
Hello everyone, and thank you for coming to listen to us. 2001 has been a year of significant change in Syria. Calls for freedom have cried out from the street of Midan in Damascus to the streets of Hama and Dara. But still many critical, unanswered questions and challenges remain. First, who are the opposition and what do they represent? Second, what is the future and legitimacy of political Islam in the region in the light of the change? Third, would an imposition of Sharia law suppress the new expressions of freedom and democracy in Syria before they get a chance to define themselves and develop. Fourth, what is the future of women's rights and gender equality in Syria? These challenges are all interrelated, but for me, the principal challenge has been and will always be the future of women's rights in the region. Perhaps this is because when I was still a teenager in the Syrian high school some years ago, I really never imagined I would have the courage today and come here and talk about the change in future Syria. Maybe because as a generation, we have all grown up living in fear that invaded all aspects of our life. Fear to express one's opinion, fear of those in political power, religious authorities, and fear of violence associated with sexual biases and prejudice. One of the first challenges we must face is to learn to break free of fears. By breaking, not enough to call for freedom and change in the streets of Syria. We need to work together to build up a strategy, a program, agenda to build a change in Syria. The first challenge I really want to talk about, who represent all Syrians? We need to define the opposition. Who are they? And what do they stand for? Because of these restrictions, as you all know, in Syria, the majority of dialogue and organization has occurred far from the Syrian borders. It's impossible for democracy to develop in the absence of open discussion and free speech. The condition now in Syria have been anything but this. The silence of the domestic scene has been filled with the voices in the exile. However, we all know that most of those who represent foreign-based opposition parties are individuals who have been away from Syria for 20 or 30 or 50 years. The fear is these people may be disconnected from the Syrian youth in Damascus or in Hama or in Dara or wherever in Syria, and really not aware of the needs of the Syrian youth. The debate today, actually, is now far beyond the simple polarities of pro-regime and or anti-regime. The question is essentially about how to radically change a system from one of dominance and control to pro-democracy and pro-change. And here when I speak about system, it's not only political system. It's about educational system in Syria. It's about social system. It's about family system. It's about even gender equality and gender system in Syria. The greatest risk facing our country is to simply substitute one repressive system with another one, just as restrictive and limiting. Syrian society and its institutions need to make radical change, need to evolve from a system of submission and fear to one of dialogue that ensures continued secular participation of all Syrians. With regard to the question of the legitimacy and the future of political Islam in the region, the religious parties are unprepared and unqualified to play the role of referee of these soon-to-be born freedom. They are equally out of touch as those of the Syrian diaspora who left the home country years ago. In this sense, why I really refer to them as illegitimate? Because they definitely do not represent the Syrian youth. They don't represent someone like me who want to see Syria free and live in democracy. Or even all religious and ethnic minorities who have long called Syria home. They are entirely also in opposition to the slow but steady improvement of human rights, that of gender equality and women's rights. Quite to the contrary, the religious parties want to turn the clock back. First, let us ask what platform, program, solutions do the Islamist parties represent or propose? Typically, in the main Arab countries, they sit on the sidelines, often refusing to participate, and have no real agenda except the limited self-serving run of getting into power. Anyone can say, we are against corruption, we are against poverty, we want democracy, we want freedom. Okay, this is a superficial, simply a simple way of looking at things. The Islamists are clear that the first goal is to take power. Indeed, their only platform is the need to be in power, hence the total lack of attention on what government are really supposed to do, i.e. provide solutions to current problems. Let me sum up on this point and say effective government is about running schools, running hospitals, providing electricity and water, provide people butter and bread on the table, and so many other public services and infrastructure. Whatever does any religion have to do with such modern technical services? Democracy and capitalism may not be perfect, but at least it is able to evolve, adjust, change as the world develops and new problems and concerns are presented with each new generation. The Islamists, on the other hand, demand that 1,004 years all patriarchal tradition be forced on us, whether we like it or not. Let me conclude my notes with saying, we should not also sacrifice what we have as one of the challenges I think about. I am troubled by what I see as tendency in many of the Arab Spring Revolution across the region that somehow place gender equality and women's rights as the least right. That somehow the suppression of women in society is of secondary importance, and the correction of this illness can somehow afford to wait while the important business of politics are resolved. I would like to propose, and I believe the most important idea I want to make to this panel today and to you, that the contrary is true, that gender equality is one of the most important rights that we need to defend and uphold if we as a society will have any future and prosperity. There is no society in the world today that has succeeded in bringing wealth to its people which has not unlocked the energy and contribution of the half of its population, where I mean women, of course. Just as we now free ourselves from the fears we grow up with, we need to throw off the social, religious, and political prejudice, not to mention the violence that continue to repress women in our society. While we fight hard to achieve the great improvements that our country will certainly accomplish one day, we must also be careful to protect and preserve the hard-won freedom that we have already made. If we are forced to pay for one freedom at the price of another, sacrifice one life for the sake of another, then we risk having gained little or nothing at all in the end. Thank you.
السيد الرئيس، السيدات والسادة، اسمحوا لي باسمي وباسم المجلس الوطني الديمقراطي السوري وباسم جميع الأعضاء أن نرحب بكم بالجميع ونحن سعداء بمشاركتنا معكم، لأن الأمر في سوريا اليوم يحتاج إلى الاهتمام والحذر من جميع الأطراف السياسية المعنية بمستقبل سوريا. إننا نعيش ثورة داخلية تستمر منذ 9 أشهر حتى الآن، ونرى أن الطريق معقد ويحتاج إلى التعاون والتفكير من جميع القوى الوطنية المعنية بسوريا المستقبل. هناك خيارات مطروحة أمامنا. أرى أنه الغرب والقوى الخارجية ترون بمنعطف طريق بين خيارين. الخيار الأول وهو الخيار الذي يقود إلى العنف والذي يمثل التيار الإسلامي المتطرف والمعارضات المرتبطة بالخارج. ثم هناك سياسة النظام التعسفية الدكتاتورية وأجهزته الأمنية. لذا فإننا نرى أننا يجب أن نكون الطريق الثالث أو من الخيار الثالث، وهذه السياسة يتبناها المجلس الوطني وجميع الأحزاب والحركات التي تعمل ضمن هذا المجلس. نرى أن سوريا بالنسبة لنا أن سوريا دولة مستقلة وذات سيادة، وقد قاتلنا وتحررنا من الاستعمار التركي العثماني والفرنسي، فأستغرب كيف تكون هناك دول أو منظمات وحركات تدعو إلى التدخل الخارجي اليوم باسم الديمقراطية والحرية. هناك من يدعو إلى التدخل التركي وآخر يدعو إلى التدخل الغربي. سؤالنا الذي يحيرنا هو: هل سيكون التدخل الخارجي الذي سيأتي إلى سوريا ونطالب به سيضرب شعبنا بالورد، أم أنه سيقتل أطفالنا وسيدفع الشعب السوري ثمن ذلك؟ السؤال الذي يجب أن نسأله: لماذا نخشى من الديمقراطية ولماذا تخشى القوى السياسية في المعارضة وفي النظام صوت الديمقراطية؟ لماذا نخشى صناديق الاقتراع؟ يجب أن نكون حضاريين وأن نلجأ إلى أسلوب سياسي يعبر عن صوت شعبنا وعن جميع الفئات. بالنسبة لي أنا شخصيا أرى أن سوريا بعد اليوم لن تكون إلا لأبنائها ولن تكون إلا لفئات ومقاومات بالكامل. لن تتخرجت القوى ولن تكون لقوى خارجية، وإنما لدينا الإمكانيات الحضارية والسياسية أن تكون سوريا تقال من قبل جميع فئاتها بدون تمييز بين طوائف وبين مقاومات أخرى من الشعب السوري. يجب أن نبتعد عن الغرور وأن نبتعد عن المنافع الشخصية وأن نلجأ إلى الحوار ومصلحة الوطن. ونحن في هذا المكان، لماذا لا ننظر إلى أين تواجدنا الآن؟ نحن في البرلمان الأوروبي 27 دولة متوحدة تختلف في اللغة وفي الدين وفي العادات وفي التاريخ وفي القومية وفي جميع الأشياء، متحدين لأسباب اقتصادية ولأسباب سياسية. لماذا لا ننظر؟ نحن دولة صغيرة، لماذا لا ننظر إلى أنفسنا؟ لدينا مقاومات تجمعنا أكثر، فنحن في مكان هناك فيه حوار ديمقراطي بين جميع مقاومات الدول التي تشارك في البرلمان. فأطلب من الأخوة أن يكون مثلنا في هذا المكان. وشكرا.
We are still working together at the end of that dinner. I'm sure we will be. Thank you very much for your contribution. May I thank William Morris and the New Century Foundation for all of their input in assisting to make sure that the arrangements have worked in the way that they have today, and to ensure that participants who wanted to be here were aware that the conference was taking place. Finally now, Ribal Al-Assad, I turn to you.
Thank you very much.
The title remains the same.
Thank you. I would like to thank Mr. Sajjad Karim and the ECR group for taking the initiative for holding this important and timely conference. It is unfortunate that some groups refuse to attend, which obviously show their true colors, even though they claim to be democratic and to represent all Syrians. However, I do hope that all Syrian groups can and will sit together in the European Parliament in the near future. As many of you know, I have been campaigning for democracy and freedom in Syria for many years before the Arab Spring. The critical question now is, we are at a crossroad. Syria could either go down the road of civil war, which would highly likely lead to a regional war, or it could go down the road towards a peaceful transition to political and religious pluralism. Of course, we want the latter, but the question is, how do we achieve that? And that's why we are here today. Clearly, the first point is that the Syrian regime needs to end the repression and the killing, and we need a united opposition that could facilitate a peaceful transition. So the question that we need to answer is, how do we unite the opposition and bring it on to a common platform? And of course, one way is to sit here and have dialogue with each other. But clearly, we have to see, why has the regime, we have to ask ourselves, why has the regime clinged on to power for 9 months now? Actually, one of the main points is that we have to admit that it's mainly the fault of the opposition groups. We have failed until now to have a united front, a united opposition. As we know, the SNC considers themselves as to be mainly the main opposition leaders. They've been acting like it. They have refused to sit with many other opposition groups. They talk about democracy, but they don't know exactly what democracy is. They think that democracy is having elections. A lot of them have lived between 30 and 40 years in the West, and until now, they don't know the real meaning of democracy. Democracy, the true meaning of democracy is that we have to accept each other. We have to sit with people, even if they are different from us, even if we disagree with each other. We have to guarantee the security of all Syrian citizens. They have to all to be equal under the rule of law. Yesterday, for example, we had Secretary of State Hillary Clinton who met with the SNC, and she said that, she told them that you have to assure and secure that all minorities would have, they will be included in a post-Assad regime. Well, how will they show that? I mean, everybody has said the same thing. William Hague said the same thing also. He said that before recognizing any opposition, they have to be united. And obviously, some people listen, but they do not want to understand. Or they listen and they honestly don't understand. That's even worse. That's the problem. It would be much worse then. The SNC, for example, as you have heard, they have a meeting in Turkey lately with the Free Syrian Army, which again, a lot of people doubt how many are what's the real numbers of the Syrian army, who are the Free Syrian Army, and all of that. As you know, when the demonstrations were started in Syria, we have called from the beginning for the demonstrations to be peaceful and to keep them peaceful, because the regime would love to see people carrying arms and using arms against the regime so that they could reply with force. And that's the only, that was their plan from the beginning, and they have succeeded at that. And unfortunately, the opposition groups have helped the regime in doing that, indirectly of course, without knowing it. And other countries have done so at the same time. Other countries who have allowed, for example, the existence of some television channels, extremist television channels, such as Wisal and Safa, who call every day on jihad against minorities, who call on jihad, and they call minorities in Syria and in the Middle East as infidels, and we have to call jihad on them and kill those infidels. Well, this is unacceptable. And obviously this has helped the Syrian regime a lot, because as we all remember in the beginning, people from all over Syria, from all religions, from all ethnicities, from all sects, they have all rose up together, together. They all went to the streets together, hand in hand, shouting, "One, the Syrian people are one." Well, this was their message from the beginning, but obviously we haven't listened to them. I mean, the Syrian opposition and other countries haven't listened to that. And today the regime is very happy about what happened, because as long as the demonstrations were peaceful, they couldn't use force. They couldn't use the intervention of the military. And now, as you have seen, they armed some groups. They allowed, and also some other, groups from Lebanon and Turkey to bring weapons to the borders, and they have dragged Syria into a civil war. And I said, I've warned from the beginning: be careful not to fall into the regime's trap, not to be dragged into what they want you to go. Because we have to understand that people in the regime, people who are around Bashar, there are people who have brought Bashar to power, who have, because they had interest in the state. All of those military secret services, all the security apparatus, all all of those people had secrets and stakes, stakes in the states, and they did not want to see that changing. So this is why they brought him into power, and those same people are very worried about any reforms today. As we all remember, in 2001, when he started the Arab Spring, the Damascus Spring, and he was calling for, he wanted to do some reforms and other things. We also saw that a few months later, all of that stopped. Why? Nobody ever asked why. Why? Because those people, obviously, around him, seem to be much stronger than he is. It seems to be that they are controlling all over everything in the government. They have control all over Syria. And that is very unfortunate. They know that if there is any change towards democracy, they will be brought to justice, there will be trial, and they are ready to drag Syria into civil war, drag the whole region into a regional war for them just to stay in power. This is again our mistake. It was a big mistake to start making all this way for the Free Syrian Army. I think the regime started even giving numbers. Like the Free Syrian Army are around 20,000 people today. And first of all, it doesn't seem very logical. Why would we take even what the regime says and repeats it? Because 20,000 people. It would be felt in Syria to have 20,000 armed people who are fighting against the regime. The amount of killings per day would be much higher. And secondly, how does it help opposition groups to say we are 20,000 people now? It doesn't help the opposition group. What it helps is the Syrian regime. The Syrian regime has a huge army, has a lot of weapons, and the only way, the more the opposition says we are armed and we are greater in numbers, the more the regime is going to use force. As I know many of you know yesterday, the city of Homs is surrounded by hundreds of tanks, by rocket launchers and other things, and they're ready to go into the city of Homs. And the only way that they could use such great military force is by saying that the opposition is, you could see in the media, the foreign media, and the Western media, everybody's saying that the Free Syrian Army, they're around 20,000 people, and they are gangs and they're killing people, and we have to defend with full force. And unfortunately, this is where we are today. Sorry, just to add one more thing is that to add to this is that there are also some Libyan fighters who were rebels who were sent to Turkey, around 700 of them, and their leader is Mr. Belhaj, who was an Al-Qaeda member, and he was in Guantanamo before being sent back to Libya. He was under Gaddafi, was put in jail and then released, and he was leading the forces against Gaddafi's forces in Tripoli. And today they sent him to Syria. I mean, what an embarrassment it would be if the Syrian regime catch this Libyan rebels, or one of them or two of them, and put them on Syrian television. How would that work for the opposition groups? We all know that Syrians, the same way as Libyans, who did not accept any Africans being in their countries and killing their own people, I don't think the Syrians would like to see other Arabs or foreigners coming and killing their own people, no matter what. And certainly not if their leaders is part of Al-Qaeda or an ex-Guantanamo prison. Thank you very much.
Is it Bashar al-Assad, or is he just a public face? Does he actually hold any power at all? Ribal?
Sorry. As I said, we all know how when Bashar took power, he was not even supposed to be there. It was supposed to be his brother who passed away in a car accident in '94. So he was brought back from London. He was given, he rose in military ranks from '94 until 2000. He became an admiral, the highest ranking, in the Syrian army. And as I said, there were people around his father, who had a lot of interest in the case, such as his family from his mother's side, the Mahlouf family, who hold every state area. They have, all the businesses. Those people and other people in the security apparatus, they do not want to see that changing. They know very well that if he tries, and he did try, we cannot have to be fair to both sides. He did try. We all have heard of the Damascus Spring. We all have heard that he signed many decrees, but obviously none of them went ahead. none of them went ahead because those people, as I said, in customs, secret service and police at all other places, do not want any changes. They are brought in there because they know he's weak. They are brought in there because they know they can control him. And today is the same thing, as we all remember at the beginning of the demonstration. He was ordering people not to shoot at protesters. Bothaina Sha'ban went and said the same thing, but again, nobody listened and they will continue on shooting. And this shows you how weak he is.
Gentleman indicated asking for the floor. Would you kindly introduce yourself?
دكتور عجلان تجمع الوطن الديمقراطي. في توضيحات يجب ان نوضحها بالنسبه للاخ انور ابراهيم بيحكي عن استقلال الاوتو ديترمينيشن تبع الاكراد وحكينا في القصه هي يجب ان يكون بعباره تحت السياده والقانون السوري. اذا تريد ان فعلا تكسب رضا سوري يجب ان يكون هذه العباره مضافه الى حق تقرير مصير الاكراد. ثانيا انا اتفق تماما مع سيد ريبال. اول شيء تعلمته عن الديمقراطيه في جامعه بورو هو ان الاكثريه لا تقهر الاقليه، ان الاكثريه تحاول الاقليه، لان الاقليه لها حقوق يمكن ان تصل الى السلطه فيما بعد. فلذلك هناك من السوريين من يستثني الاخرين باسم احتكروا الديمقراطيه.
So
yes, I
have a question, please.
Yes, the question is, let me finish, because I have a question in this sentence. يجب أن نعرف أن في سوريا مستقبل سوريا لا يبنى إلا بحوار الأكثرية والأقليات، وبأن الأقليات ليس لأن بشار الأسد ينتمي إلى طائفة معينة هي تمنع أو تكره جميع الطوائف. سوريا يجب أن تبنى مع جميع. هذا السؤال يجب أن يكون محوريا. بالنسبة للسيدة اللي حكت عن حقوق المرأة، أعتقد أن الإسلام والحياة الإسلامية تجهد حقوق المرأة، لكن الرجل في مجتمعنا وفي تربيته هو العامل الأكبر للمرأة. وأشكر السيد فاروق أيضا على المداخلة التي كانت واضحة وجيدة، وشكرا جزيلا لكم.
Please interpret the question.
There was a question.
There was no question.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear the question.
The question is for the representative of girls. How can you talk about self-determination without sovereignty of Syria? If we talk about self-determination of Kiev, every Syrian and we understand that we want a free Kurdistan state. That's what I say to you. Clear this point, please.
Please take the floor, answer.
Thank you very much for this concern. I do apologize. Question is, we all Kurd, we say we are Syrian, and we are willing to have our self-determination in Syria within the sovereignty of Syria as a Syrian. I think that is clear. And regarding to the majority and minority, we think right of minorities has to be secured, and only in that case we can let the majorities to be in the country, because we are, as a minority, we have a concern and we have fear from the majority. Thanks.
You have mentioned that women's rights in Syria or in the Middle East are confiscated by men. And I want to ask you, who are these men? These men are product of the Islamic system or of religion. And now I want to make my point very clear. I am not against religion. I'm not against Islam. I was brought up in a Muslim society. I am against people who appointed themselves as the spokesman of God on earth. And maybe you don't know what it means like to be a woman in a Muslim society where they suppress women. I have suffered as a female dramatist who really fight Islamists and extremism in Syria. I have been confiscated by Muslim scholars like Bouti in Syria, and that's one of the things I have faced. So you can't just come here and say that it's a problem of men, because it's not. Because men, it's not a problem of men, it's about the abuse of some men or some Islamists or some religious scholars of Islam in order to suppress women. And that's my point. بمعنى آخر أنت قلت بأن الرجل هو عدو المرأة الأول، وهذا ليس صحيح، لأن الرجل مكمل للمرأة كما المرأة مكملة للرجل، والإسلام أعطى حقوق مساوية للمرأة والرجل. وكانت فكرتي بأن الإسلاميين هم الذين يستخدمون الإسلام لاضطهاد المرأة والاضطهاد المجتمع، لأنهم يستخدمون الأسس الإسلامية المبنية يعني على الذكورية والفكر الذكوري للإسلام. وأريد أن أقول أيضا بأن حديثي لم يكن ضد الإسلام أو ضد المسلمين، كان حديثي ضد من يفوض نفسه بأنه متحدث باسم الله على الأرض. شكرا.
Gentleman in the green tie indicated he would like to put a question. Okay, we'll come straight to you.
Yes, I'd like to refer the panel to Bashar al-Assad's interview yesterday with Barbara Walters, and I'd like to...
Would you please put the microphone and kindly introduce yourself?
So, I'm Dr. the Iranian opposition activist with the Green Movement. I'd like to refer the panel to the interview by Barbara Walters with Bashar al-Assad that was broadcast yesterday. And I'd like to know what the panel think about Bashar's answers, his state of mind, and also what the Syrian people's reaction would have been to his interview. And I'd like Mr. Karim and Mr. Herman to also remark on that if possible.
Karim, what's your response?
Yeah, I have no comment. For me, this is the democracy's way. I think I don't.
You have a right to reserve your comments. Bashar, what did he say? Yes.
Yes, I think he said, Yes, I think the remarks that were said about him that he was disconnected from reality is what he said, that he didn't order the killing. I repeat again, yes, he did not order the killings, but he holds the responsibility. At the end of the day, he's the president. In Syria, we all have to know that he's the president of the republic, he's the head of the Ba'ath Party, he's the head of the army. He has, under the Syrian constitution, he's responsible for everything. And that's why he has to know this. Why I've asked from him many times to step down, to take the side of his people against those corrupt people who are around him. And then all the people will stand by him and defeat those corrupt people around him. But he cannot just stand, sit there and say, I'm the president, but I'm not responsible. It doesn't work that way. Because as I said, he needs the courage to step down and say that, I can't take it any longer. I've tried my best. I've tried to make changes. I've tried to move towards reform. But those people are not letting me move ahead.
From the transcript that I saw yesterday, it was quite clear to me that there's indications of Bashar al-Assad trying to distance himself from what is actually happening on the ground. But the fact of the matter remains this: he is the legal and constitutional head of a state. And he is the public face of that state to the international community, where we are seeing what is happening on the ground. Ultimately, he should expect to be held to account for what is happening there today. And I think that's a very clear message that the EU has tried the very best to send to him. One final question now on this particular round I'm going to take from this gentleman here. So I did try and call you before, but you were busy speaking. You were distracted. Please, the floor is yours.
بس بدي موضوع مداخلة صغيرة. عم نحكي على الثورة السورية وعلى الشعب السوري والشارع السوري. طبعا نحن جايين متواجدين بالشارع السوري، بس قفزنا على الموضوع هم الشعب السوري بكل وضوح. الشارع السوري كردا عربا علويين، كل الشعب السوري طلبوا الحماية الدولية، طلبوا منطقة عازلة. بس نحن الأكراد قلنا متحسسين موضوع المنطقة العازلة من أجل تركيا، لأن لنا أطماع عثمانية وتطور وشغلة ثانية، وطلبوا الحظر الجوي. ليش؟ مع التأمل بقضية الشعب. شو طالب الشارع السوري؟ في حال إذا انتظرنا الجامعة العربية فعل الشعب السوري السلام. حتى الآن أين هو الشارع العربي؟ يعني الشارع العربي تحت الشارع العربي لحد الآن متخاذل ما موجود. أين هو الأمم المتحدة متخاذلة؟ الاتحاد الأوروبي موجودين هون متخاذلين. العالم كله متخاذل مع الشعب السوري، والأهم والمؤسف جدا المعارضة العربية السورية وعلى رأسها المجلس الوطني السوري متخاذل ضد الشعب السوري. هاي نقاط أساسية المفروض نوقف عليها وناخذ بعين الاعتبار الشعب شو بده، مو أنا شو بدي، مو نحن شو بدنا، الشعب السوري الثوار شو بده. شكرا.
It's not as easy as that, but as I tried to explain, military intervention is really very contentious at this point in time, and I think, as I also try to underline, there are many ways still that we can increase pressure and use other means than military intervention. And I think that the show of solidarity should concentrate for the time being on those means. And I would like to add, because I said that the international community, including the EU, should throw its full political weight behind the Syrian National Council. I did not mean by that saying that that should come as a blank check, as unconditional support. There is as much pressure to be exerted on the Syrian National Council as on the Assad regime. As I said, the Syrian National Council has to work on its legitimacy and on its inclusiveness. And whatever the immediate future events will hold, it's clear also that the Syrian National Council, its role is a transitional one. Of course, after to ensure that there will be peaceful transition, then elections will come, and then Syrians will wake up and see that, okay, the opposition has to be united on the rules of the game, but then once the game is played out and there's democracy, then there will be differences of opinion, and you will have to learn to live with those and to function as a democratic country.
Ribal?
Yes, حبيت أرد على الأخ زين. الأخ زين لازم نحن نعرف إنه يعني أي تدخل خارجي في سوريا يكون كارثة، لأنه طلب بحظر الطيران هذا شيء يعني غير معقول. إذا جهة نفسه مين يقدر ينفذ هذا الشيء؟ مستحيل. كمان نحن نعرف إنه سوريا ما أنها ليبيا، يعني سوريا عندها جيش يطلع نص مليون عسكري وأكثر من 700,000 بالاحتياط، يعني عندهم صواريخ كيميائية وبيولوجية، عندهم 5,000 دبابة، تركيا ما عندها 700 دبابة. عندهم صار في هلا بواخر روسيه في حمله طيران روسيه في المنطقه، صار في الفيتو الصيني والفيتو الروسي، في عندهم العراق خلفائهم كمان، في عندهم ايران، في يعني الامور ما عندنا بهالسهوله. العالم اللي بيطالبوا بالتدخل الخارجي هذا رح يكون كارثه، ما لازم اصلا نحن نفكر فيه، لان هذا ما رح يجيب غير الويلات. يعني مساحه ليبيا مساحه كبيره، يعني 6 مليون بمساحه شاسعه، يعني احنا عندنا الشام لحالها في 6 مليون مثلا، معقول كم قديش بيوقع ضحايا يعني. فنحن بالعكس نرفض اي تدخل خارجي في سوريا. مجلس الامن يعملوا يوجهوا رساله الى سوريا، بعتقد حاولوا بس اكثر من هيك ما فيهم، لانه في فيتو، يعني فيتو الصيني والروسي ما راح يتخلوا عن، ما راح يتراجعوا يعني عن الفيتو تبعهم. فحتى التدخل التركي، تعرف انت يعني التدخل التركي عند الشعب السوري، كل الشعب السوري مرفوض، لانه تركيا كل العالم تتذكر انه يعني تركيا ما صار لها زمان اصلا، يعني ذكروا الحكم العثماني، ذكروا عدد 200,000 قتيل راحوا بسوريا على الخازوق كما بنتذكر نحن في سوريا، وهي ما صار لها زمان، يعني من مئات السنين ما صار لها زمان، وهذا تاريخ الشعب السوري بيتذكر هالشيء. وكمان اليوم النظام في تركيا هو نظام إسلامي، وهذا النظام الإسلامي يعني أنشأ معارضة وساعد على إنشاء معارضة هن المجلس الوطني السوري اللي هو 80% منه من الإسلاميين. فهذا الشيء كمان الشعب السوري ما بيقبله، يعني يتوقف مع كل المعارضة بشكل معارضة ضمن كل الناس، مو معقول يكون في يعني معارضة من دون واحد مدعومة من نظام من كمان إسلامي. فهذا الشيء اللي خلانا نشوف اليوم انه لهلا عدم مثلا خروج مظاهرات في خروج الشام ومدينه حلب اكبر مدينتين في سوريا، وهذا اللي خلاني كمان أشوف وقوف كل الأقليات على يعني محدد هم مستحيل ما بيقبلوا بهذا الشيء، مستحيل يقبلوا بأي تدخل عسكري، خاصة والله يجوا يشوفوا ليجي المجلس الوطني السوري يجي يستلم الحكم بسوريا، لأنه يقول لك نحن أكيد بدنا تغيير، كل العالم بتتمنى الديمقراطية، بس بيقول لك ما بدنا نحن نشيل دكتاتور يجي محله والله اللادن ولا ما يشبه يعني نظام إسلامي، هذا الشيء مرفوض تماما في سوريا. إن شاء الله.
بس عفوا ما خلينا التدخل الخارجي، حكم الحماية الدولية في فرق.
I can call at this stage, and Ribal Al-Assad has been waiting right from the start of the session, so I'm going to allow him to put his question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Sajjad. I'd like to actually have a question which is directed to you, but also to the gentleman who's the journalist, I think, the Kurdish brother who's sitting there. He's asking why do we attack or what do we have against the Syrian National Council? Actually, the question I should ask you, when you first, Mr. Karim, when you came up with this conference today, it was supposed to be to unify, to have all Syrian opposition sitting together in that room today and have a dialogue. And we know that you have invited all sides, and we know that they have refused to come here. Not only they have refused, but they also went to another group in the European Parliament, and they have asked to have their own conference that shows you how undemocratic they are and how they're not willing to sit with any other party. The other thing, we should know that we cannot move forward, as the gentleman said, we cannot move forward. The regime has been now, since the demonstration started, has taken 9 months. The regime has not moved anywhere. This SNC, they have called on the regime to go, and the regime didn't go anywhere. Why? Because the regime, it's just a stupid idea to tell the regime to go. You know, the regime is not just the 10 people sitting on top. They're calling against, they're always calling against the Alawites, the Assads, the Ba'ath Party. Well, the Ba'ath Party, there are 2 million Ba'athists in Syria. Where are they going to go? Are you telling them just, we've seen what the consequences of what happened in Iraq. Are you telling them it's not because they have strong belief in the Ba'ath Party, but those people have jobs? Where do you want them to go? You know, yes, we want the head of the regime, we want the few members at the top to go, but we cannot ask for everyone else to go. And if also we want to price away those people from around the regime, they must see some incentive. They should be assured that they will be included. How are they going to see that when they see that the SNC is not able even to sit with other opposition groups? They're not even open to any dialogue with other opposition groups. So how are they going to trust them? This is why they are continuing to support the actual regime, and they will continue as long as there's an opposition that's not unified. They will continue to support them. And as I said, the solution is not any external. It doesn't come from the outside. It has to come from the inside, and the Syrians themselves are the only people who can change Syria. And they ask how. It's certainly not by having a safe, like basically near Turkey or whatever. They have to stand together. They have to they have to accept each other. At the Syrian National Democratic Council, we have, they were the first to say we, accept and in the country recognize the self-determination of our brothers, the Kurds under Syrian sovereignty, which is totally normal. And we have the Kurdish people have been living there for centuries, and we cannot, as Muslims and Arabs and whatever, we cannot forget Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, and who was a great leader, a Muslim leader, and we all, I think a lot of people don't even know that he was Kurdish. And on the other side, we also have the minorities. The minorities have to be assured, and there are 40% of minorities. Okay, no, please.
I'm going to question to you as the final question from the comments that you made. If I could have interpretation, please, because there are people here who require it. Things to a close at this stage. Can I say, just in my closing remarks, and it was a comment that was made by Khalid regarding the conference that he attended in London. I've seen many encouraging signs from what has taken place here today. but from the way that we are perceiving what is happening in Syria today. And believe me, we don't take it lightly at all. You only have to go away and look at the numbers of debates that have already taken place from the floor of the House, including statements made by the High Representative for Foreign Affairs specifically dealing with the situation in Syria. You will see from that how seriously we are taking this. And in fact, just as I was coming here, I was informed once again that the High Representative for Foreign Affairs will be making a further statement on the situation in Syria in Strasbourg next week. But based upon how we are doing things at this stage, the question remains in my mind: are you, the people of Syria, genuinely going to be able to unite for one purpose, and that is to bring about the change in the regime that I believe the majority of you want and desire? What's also quite clear to me is that unless and until, as opposition groups, you are able to come forward, not necessarily with the same program, but individual programs, all of which genuinely address the everyday concerns of Syrian people, those who today remain on the side of the existing regime will never be convinced that you have the solutions or the answer. They will never come and join with you. And unless and until that happens, I'm afraid you're going to be stuck with the status quo. It's a very clear message that I'm delivering to you today. And I hope that those of you and your groups that are present here today will continue to extend that invitation to groups that felt they couldn't be present in the room today. I genuinely would have much rather they were here and voiced their differences rather than excluded themselves and kept hold of their inner beliefs in this way. I hope we can concentrate on the positives that have happened here today. I hope that by allowing this platform to all of you, European Parliament has today encouraged you all to go away from here with a positive message to engage more, not just with us, but with one another, and to come up with your own distinct programs that can be put before the Syrian people. With that, I bring the conference to a close, and I thank you all for your attendance. Thank you.